This is Poppy and Rye Chapter 25, called Inside the Lodge. Atop the beaver's lodge, Poppy woke with a start. How long had she slept? She stood tall and looked east. There was a faint hint of dawn. It made her heart lurch. With the coming of dawn, she was sure the beavers would awaken. When they did, she would lose whatever chance she had to free Rye. A great deal of time already had been lost. She scrambled to the top of the lodge where she thought the vent hole had been. As before, all she found was mud. This time, however, she was desperate. Putting the vine ring aside, she clawed at the mud. While heavy and thick, it was capable of being dug. Poppy began to hack at it. Gradually, the hole emerged. The more she worked, the more her energy was restored, and she worked harder. Unexpectedly, she broke through. A scent of beaver wafted up. It made her almost shout with joy. She had uncovered the vent hole. The mud had been plastered over, and poorly at that. Working fast now, Poppy dug at the vent holes to its fullest. Done, she sat back, breathless from her efforts. Now there was nothing to prevent her from at least trying to get Rye, force his cage open, and free him. Then she recalled that one of her reasons she had wanted Thistle and Curly Duck to join her was to help with the bars. There was nothing to do but go on. She and Rye would have to get him free on their own. Feeling almost reckless now, Poppy tied one of the ends of the vine to a stick. She took the free end with her mouth and crept up into the vent hole. Even though she made her way through the hole before, this time it seemed longer. Moreover, some of the mud had already fallen from the top. She was constantly scraping it away and pushing it behind her. Down she went, and finally she reached the end. She peered into the lodge. To her horror, the beavers were not sleeping. They were having a meeting. Mr. Knad was standing before the family. Next to him was his daughter Clara. With great glee, she was telling them what had happened out in the pond. "I don't think any of them survived," she said with pride, "and it only took one smack of the old tail." The beavers beat their own tails against the ground, even Mr. Knad joining in. "All right, folks, I just want to check out for myself. Clara did a great job, but if seeing is believing, the mice up on the hill are no good around that boulder. That's where we're going to put the new dam. What Clara discovered suggests they've got something up their sleeves. Maybe they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Okay, I say it's time we pulled out all the stops. Even our kid glove treatment. Kid the old whole knit and caboodle and a tick or two. Knock 'em off their spots, lower the boom. Let's go up there and give 'em a few what fors. Level the playing field with our tails. Do I have any volunteers?" There was an enthusiastic chorus of yay-sayers. "Good," Mr. Knad said. "Let's hit the water running, and I'll lead for myself." "Don't you think we should post some guards around the waterway entry?" Clara said, "just in case they try anything funny again." "Good thinking, sweetheart. You're a chip off the old block, and for a beaver, you can't do better than that. We'll leave some guards here just in case." High in the vent hole, Poppy had heard it all. Although she was relieved the beavers were going, she was worried about what was happening up by the nest. She watched as the beavers scrambled out of the lodge. Soon only two remained. It had been Poppy's intention to crawl down the vine, just as she'd done on her previous visit. Then the beavers all had to be asleep. This time the two beavers who stayed in the lodge were not just awake. One of them went over to where the cage was where Rye was being kept. "What are you doing?" called the other beaver. "Just checking to make sure this guy's secure." "Is he?" "A sure thing." The two beavers waddled away from the cage and laid down near the lodge's entry to guard it. Poppy watched them intently. Their backs were to her. In the dimness, the fireflies were not very active. Poppy was sure that she had saw Rye. He was curled up in a tight ball at the far end of his cage. Even as she watched him, he got up and crept to one of the back bars. There he was crouched. If she was seeing clearly, he was gnawing on one of them. Just to see Rye working made Poppy's heart swell with love. Her doubts melted away. Together, somehow, they would get him out of the cage into freedom. Her pulse quickened. After giving a yank to the vine to make sure it would hold fast, Poppy began to lower it slowly. As she did, she kept her eyes on the two beavers. If they saw what she was doing, all was lost. She barely dared to breathe. Inch by inch, the vine dropped. One of the beavers swung about and used a rear leg to scratch himself vigorously. Poppy froze. but the beaver's face was so scrunched up, he seemed to be enjoying scratching. He gave no sign that he noticed anything unusual. Poppy lowered the vine some more. She was pretty sure she had guessed its length properly, that it would touch the floor. She was wrong. Even when she had lowered the vine as far as possible, it hung off the ground by a distance. At best, Poppy could reckon twice her full height when she stood tall. At first dismayed, she decided it didn't matter. It had to be, close enough. The next step would be harder. It was time for her to go down. Head first or tail first? She glanced over at the beavers. They were paying no attention. Best to go tail first. If the need came, heading up would be easier and faster than backing up. After wiping her sweaty paws on her fur, Poppy grasped the vine and began to descend by letting herself drop in a series of small jerks. The moment she left the vent hole in the ceiling, the vine began to sway. The farther she went, the greater the sway. It made her dizzy and nauseated. She knew she would have to come down head first, like the first time. Squeezing her eyes shut, Poppy continued down. Moving with her eyes gave her a panicky feeling, far worse than the dizziness. She opened them in haste and hung there. The vine swayed, her dizziness increased. Gritting her teeth, she made herself go on. As she moved, she kept looking around at the beavers. They had remained quite still. It was just as she had reached the halfway point that they showed signs of activity. One of them got up and arched his back and then turned fully around. Poppy almost fainted with fright. But the beaver turned back around and resumed guarding the entryway. Never had Poppy felt so glad to be so small. Poppy struggled to suppress her anxiety and move faster. A little calmer, she continued down. She had reached the vine's end. Now she was dangling above the floor. There she hung, swaying back and forth, her heart beating madly. After taking one more look at the beaver, she released her grip and dropped to the floor. The second she landed, she crouched down into a tight ball as she could. Then, with great care, she lifted her head to check what the beavers were doing. They had not noticed her. With a burst, she sprang up and darted to the cage. "Rye!" she called in a whisper, even as she clung onto the bars. Rye looked up. "Poppy!" He gasped and fell back. "Shh," she warned. "You're always such a wonderful surprise," he said. In spite of herself, Poppy grinned. "Poppy?" "Yes?" I've been working on a poem for you. Would you like to hear it? It goes, "Hail, sweet mouse of shape divine, who pledged her heart and tail to me and mine." "Rye," Poppy interrupted. "It sounds beautiful, but there is no time for that right now. We need to get you out of here fast." "I'm all for that," Rye agreed. "We've been working away at this bard too, and it's awfully tough, almost as hard as writing a good poem. And they do watch me, but I did make some progress. Poem and bar. Maybe the two of us can do the rest? The bar, that is." "Show me where." "Here." He went back to the cage. Poppy on the outside followed him. "This one." Poppy looked at the twig. It was gnawed almost halfway through. "Makes my teeth sore," Rye said. "Well, if you gripped from above," Poppy suggested, "and I held from below, maybe and pulled in opposite directions, it might give." "We could try." The two mice did what Poppy suggested. "Pull," Rye urged, and the two yanked. There was some give, but not enough. "Again," Rye said. The twig splintered with a sudden snap. While it did not break completely in two, it had been pulled wide enough to allow Rye to squeeze through. He popped out and gave Poppy a hug, and she returned it. "Do you want to hear the rest of the poem?" he asked. "Let's get out of here first." "Of course, that's silly of me. How did you come in?" "The vent hole in another vine. A much longer one. Come on." With Poppy in the lead, the two mice crept across the floor of the lodge. As they went, Poppy kept darting glances at the beavers. Rye, following Poppy, kept thinking, "Isn't she amazing? Isn't she something?" They were halfway to the vine when one of the beavers turned, looked at them, saw what happened, and cried, "Mice on the loose!"